Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the channel. And today I'm going to go to my review of AEW's Full Gear. Starting off the evening, we'll go to our first match of the night. It is Jungle Boy versus Luchasaurus in a steel cage matchup. I thought this was a great match to start Full Gear. Back and forth matchup between Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus, with Jungle Boy unloading strikes on Luchasaurus in the middle of the ring. Jungle Boy then hits a springboard dropkick on Luchasaurus. Luchasaurus then throws Jungle Boy into the cage. Jungle Boy is now busted wide open. Luchasaurus then unloads strikes on Jungle Boy. Luchasaurus was keeping the pace of the match as well. Christian Cage is ringside. He ends up grabbing the key from the referee to open the cage door. Referee is calling for security. Security then tries to throw out Christian Cage. Jungle Boy then hits a Canadian Destroyer off a chair in the middle of the ring. Jungle Boy then hits a kill switch on Luchasaurus. Luchasaurus then gets up, hits a chokeslam on Jungle Boy through a chair that looked absolutely brutal. Jungle Boy then gets up, hits an avalanche sliced bread on Luchasaurus. Jungle Boy then hits a pile driver on Luchasaurus for a near fall. Luchasaurus then hits a tombstone pile driver on Jungle Boy. Jungle Boy then hits a elbow drop off the top of the cage on Luchasaurus through a table. And then Jungle Boy ultimately applies his signature snare trap on Luchasaurus. And your winner of the match by submission is Jungle Boy. Hats off to Jungle Boy for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is for the AEW Trios Championship. It is the Elite versus Death Triangle. Number one, man, the Elite entrance to this match was absolutely phenomenal, man. It was absolutely awesome. It was actually their first match back since the AEW All Out Media Scrum, or All Out, I should say. The fans were actually, absolutely gravitated towards this match. The match itself was a great match. Back and forth matchup between the Elite and the Death Triangle, with the Elite keeping the pace of the match. Matt Jackson then hits multiple Northern Light suplexes. Nick then hits a springboard arm drag as well. Omega then hits a Snapdragon suplex on both Penta and Pac. Matt Jackson then hits a springboard DDT on Phoenix off the apron and looked absolutely brutal. Nick Jackson then hits a Hurricane Rana off the top rope on Penta. Death Triangle then hit a Tombstone pile driver on the Elite. Pac then hits a Black Arrow on Omega. Pac then hands Phoenix the ring bell hammer. Phoenix then throws it back. Omega then hits a V-trigger. The Elite then hit a BTE trigger for a near fall. Omega then hits a V-trigger on Phoenix. Phoenix then somehow hits Omega with the ring bell hammer. Referee doesn't see it. Pins for the 3. And your winners of the match are the Death Triangle. Hats off to the Death Triangle for getting the win in that match and retaining the Trios Championships. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Nyla Rose versus Jade Cargill for the TBS Championship. I thought this was a good match. Back and forth matchup between Nyla Rose and Jade Cargill, with Jade hitting a devastating powerbomb on Nyla Rose. Nyla Rose then hits a Jaded on Jade Cargill for a near fall. And then Jade ultimately hits the finish on Nyla Rose, pins her for the 3. And your winner of the match and still TBS champion is Jade Cargill. Hats off to Jade Cargill for getting the win in that match and retaining the TBS Championship. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is for the Ring of Honor World Championship. It is Chris Jericho versus Claudio Castagnoli versus Bryan Danielson versus Sammy Guevara. I thought this was a great match. Back and forth matchup. Jericho and Claudio both exchange in the middle of the ring. Jericho then is keeping the pace of the match. Danielson then lands yes kicks on Jericho and Guevara. Guevara then hits a Spanish Fly on Danielson. Jericho then hits a Lion Salt on Danielson and Guevara. Jericho and Guevara both exchange in the middle of the ring, with Guevara hitting a code breaker for a near fall. Jericho then applies a Walls of Jericho, but the hold is broken. Claudio then applies a sharpshooter on Jericho. Guevara then hits a GTS on Jericho as well. Guevara then hits a Shooting Star Press for a near fall. Guevara then hits a Spanish Fly off the top rope on Danielson, but Danielson quickly applies a label lock. The hold is broken. Claudio then hits a neutralizer on Danielson on the outside. It looked absolutely brutal. Claudio then hits a giant swing on Guevara in the middle of the ring, but Jericho ultimately hits a Judas effect on Claudio Castagnoli, pins him for the 3, and your winner of the match and still Ring of Honor World Champion is Chris Jericho. Hats off to Chris Jericho for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Saraya versus Britt Baker. This was actually Saraya's first match in 5 years. She looked absolutely phenomenal. It was a good match, back and forth matchup between Saraya and Baker, with Baker keeping the pace of the match. Saraya ultimately hits the finish on Britt Baker, pins her for the 3, and your winner of the match is Saraya. Hats off to Saraya for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is for the TNT Championship. It is a triple threat matchup. It is Wardlow versus Hobbs versus Samoa Joe. I thought this was a good match. Back and forth matchup. Wardlow was keeping the pace of the match, with Wardlow hitting a whisper in the wind, taking out Hobbs and Samoa Joe. Wardlow then hits a swanton on Hobbs as well at the top rope. Hobbs then hits a spine buster for a near fall. Wardlow then hits multiple power bombs on Powerhouse Hobbs. Samoa Joe then hits Wardlow with the title. Joe then applies a submission on Hobbs. And your winner of the match and new AEW TNT champion is Samoa Joe. Hats off to Samoa Joe for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Jeff Jarrett teaming up with Jay Lethal versus Darby Allin and Sting in a no count out, no disqualification matchup. I thought this was a good match. Back and forth matchup between both teams, with Darby and Sting keeping the pace of the match. Satnam Singh then gets involved in the match and throws Darby Allin on the ramp. It looked absolutely brutal. Sting then hits a crossbody off the balcony on Lethal and Satnam Singh. Sting then hits a Stinger Splash on Jay Lethal and Jeff Jarrett in the corner. Satnam Singh then hits a chokeslam on Sting. Darby Allin then hits a stunner on Jay Lethal. Darby then goes for a top rope move, but Jeff Jarrett hits Darby with the guitar shot. Lethal then goes for a lethal injection on Sting, but Sting hits a Scorpion Death Drop instead. And then Darby hits a coffin drop on Jay Lethal, pins for the 3, and your winners of the match are Sting and Darby Allin. Hats off to Sting and Darby Allin for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is for the AEW Interim Women's Championship. It is Jamie Hayter versus Toni Storm. I thought this was a good match. Back and forth matchup between Jamie Hayter and Storm, with Toni Storm keeping the pace of the match. Toni lands chops on Jamie Hayter. Both Toni and Jamie Hayter both exchange in the middle of the ring. Toni then hits a hip attack on Hayter. Rebel makes her way down to the ring. Rebel then attacks Toni Storm, but the referee didn't see it. Referee then throws out Rebel. Britt Baker is here. She ends up hitting a foot stomp on Toni Storm. Hayter then hits a Storm Zero on Storm for a near fall. Storm then hits a Storm Zero of her own on Hayter for a near fall as well. Baker then takes off the turnbuckle pad. Referee doesn't see it. Hayter then sends Toni face first into the exposed turnbuckle, and then Hayter ultimately hits the finish on Toni Storm, pins her for the 3, and your winner of the match and new AEW Interim Women's Champion is Jamie Hayter. Hats off to Jamie Hayter for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is for the AEW Tag Team Championships. It is the Acclaimed versus Swerve in Our Glory. I thought this was a good match. Back and forth matchup between both teams, with the Acclaimed keeping the pace of the match. Bowens then lands chops on Keith Lee. Max Caster then hits a leg drop off the top rope on Keith Lee as well. Max then hits a crossbody off the top rope. Swerve then hits multiple head kicks on Anthony Bowens in the middle of the ring. Max Caster then hits a mic drop for a near fall. Billy Gunn is here. Swerve wants to use a weapon on Max Caster. Lee says no. Lee then walks away. The Acclaimed ultimately hit the finish on Swerve. Pins for the 3, and your winners of the match and still AEW Tag Team Champions are the Acclaimed. Hats off to the Acclaimed for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is the main event of AEW's Full Gear. It is Jon Moxley defending the AEW World Championship against MJF. I thought this was a great match. Back and forth matchup between Moxley and MJF, with Moxley keeping the pace of the match. Moxley lands chops on MJF in the middle of the ring. Moxley then hits a pile driver off the apron through a table on MJF. Regal then is ringside. He ends up throwing brass knuckles into the ring to MJF. MJF then goes for the cover. Well, MJF ends up hitting Jon Moxley with the brass knuckles. MJF then goes for the cover, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match and new AEW World Champion is MJF. Couple things I'm going to say about AEW's Full Gear before I get out of here, man. Number one, this was a solid show. 100% solid show. Couple things about this show, though, I will say that I actually enjoyed. Number one, the opening matchup, man. Jungle Boy versus Luchasaurus. This was one of those matches I put in my preview predictions, is that I said that this was one of the matches on the card that was, one of the best storylines going into this event, to be honest with you. The storyline between Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus was going on for quite a while, thanks to the help of Christian Cage. And we finally get an end result, man. I think, now Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus are probably going to do their own, go their own way and do their own thing. But this was a great match for Jungle Boy. And honestly, probably one of Jungle Boy's best matches to date for AEW. And when he got on top of the cage, man, that was definitely a moment, I think, for Jungle Boy Jack Perry, man. I think it was a great moment for Jack. I think, it was a great moment between Jack and the fans. And to see, Jungle Boy Jack Perry jump off that steel cage with an elbow drop straight out of Randy Savage's playbook right through a table with the Luchasaurus sitting on it was absolutely phenomenal, man. And I say this multiple times in the past about Jungle Boy Jack Perry. He's definitely one of the pillars of AEW. He's the future of that company, the future of the business. And I think, sky's the limit for Jungle Boy Jack Perry and AEW, man. I mean, the guy's an absolute legend already. The Elite versus Death Triangle, man. This was one of those matches where I didn't know how the fans were going to react to this match, man. But honestly, I wasn't surprised. First of all, like I said, the entrance package for the Elite, in this matchup was absolutely awesome. From the entrance music to the way the video package was set up prior to them walking down to the ring, it was just great to see the Elite back, man. And honestly, they came back with open arms. I mean, absolutely. I mean, Kenny Omega looked absolutely phenomenal in this matchup, as well as the Bucks, man. They did a fantastic job. Unfortunately, they didn't get the victory due to a disqualification by Rey Fenix. But like I said, man, the entrance, was awesome. The entrance, video package was great. The entrance song was great. I mean, it was absolutely phenomenal stuff. And even after this match was done and over with, it was announced that this is going to be a best of 7 series between the Elite versus Death Triangle. Now, in my defense, I don't think it's a great idea to have them go up against Death Triangle for 7 straight times. I just think it's very lackadaisical booking. But I will go and say that, like I said before in my preview predictions, that the Elite, they're made for those Trios Championships. Those Trios Championships were made for the Elite, and solely for the Elite. Now, Death Triangle has done a great job with defending those championships, but those belts are made for the Elite, man, 100%. Nyla Rose and Jade Cargill. I mean, what more can I say, man? I picked Jade Cargill to win this match against Nyla Rose to keep her undefeated streak. Now, in my preview predictions, I made it blatant, man. Do I think Jade Cargill can wrestle? No. I don't think she can wrestle. I believe she's another Goldberg. They're hyping her up to be another Goldberg. And not only that, man, the way that she's been carrying herself lately has just been very lackadaisical. She just had an altercation with Bow Wow or something like that at a concert. I mean, come on, man. Seriously. And not only that, it's one of those things where it's like, you beat Nyla Rose, you beat Marina Shafir twice. There needs to be a top contender, a top draw to bring in to take or dethrone, Jade Cargill. In my honest opinion, man, and I don't know who that's going to be, but I think Jade Cargill needs to go back to the drawing board. She needs to learn how to wrestle better. She needs to do better promos. She needs to actually, be a good wrestler, man, and not just do these 5 moves of doom, and that's it, And right now, I feel like Tony Khan and AEW are pretty much kind of spoon-feeding her opponents. Now, I'm not taking anything away from Nyla Rose, but to be honest with you, what's next for Jade Cargill? To be honest, because I feel like she's already gone through that women's division, and they're just, throwing everybody they can at Jade Cargill. And if that's the case, then obviously we need to work on this women's division and bring in more women to challenge Jade Cargill. Because eventually somebody is going to dethrone her, and whoever does dethrone Jade Cargill is going to be immensely over. My idea person who would throw over Jade Cargill would be, once she's healthy, would be Chris Statlander. I think Chris Statlander coming back from injury, whenever she's healthy, to dethrone Jade Cargill would be absolutely great. I think it would be a great comeback for Chris Statlander. Chris Statlander is definitely well overdue for a title shot, and it needs to happen. A lot of people are saying Thunder Rosa. Well, I think Thunder Rosa is going to have her hands full after what happened at Full Gear between Jamie Hayter and Toni Storm, which I'll get into in a minute. But again, hats off to Jade Cargill for getting the win in that match and retaining her TBS championship. The next match I have on here, the Ring of Honor World Championship match, man, I thought it was phenomenal. And my standpoint on Ring of Honor has been the same. Do I think Ring of Honor needs to be heavily showcased on AEW television? No, I do not. No. I think it takes away from the product of AEW. I think it takes away from the, the aura, if you will, around AEW and what AEW is trying to offer to its fans. And I think it's confusing the hell out of the fan base, to be honest with you. I don't have anything against Ring of Honor. A lot of really good, notable talent has come out of Ring of Honor, whether it's Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Adam Cole, AJ Styles, Bryan Danielson, Adam Page. I mean, a lot of guys, the Briscoe brothers, a lot of guys. That's just to name a few that's come out of Ring of Honor. Colt Cabana, CM Punk has even wrestled for Ring of Honor. Samoa Joe. Ring of Honor was also, a hotbed, a place for talent to develop and become superstars, man. It was almost like NXT before NXT. It was NXT before NXT, where it was technically independent wrestling that got heavily showcased and a lot of talent went there. It's almost like PWG, man. PWG is another company, that Excalibur really worked with and did commentary for, PWG. And the amount of talent that came through that building and wrestled for PWG is absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. Some of the best matches that we'll ever see and probably never see again with some of the matches that happened at, Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. I mean, it's absolutely insane. PWG was absolutely underrated, in my honest opinion. But this Ring of Honor match was good, man. I'm glad that Jericho won due to the fact that I think Jericho is going to, use this whole Jericho Ocho thing, be the heel. And honestly, it goes hand in hand with what I said with Chris Statlander. It looks like Jericho, besides this Fatal 4-Way match, Jericho's going after a lot of, former Ring of Honor champions. Well, what about Adam Cole? Once and nobody knows what's going on with Adam Cole right now. I mean, I know he's still hurt. A lot of people are really concerned about Adam Cole. We haven't seen Adam Cole, I believe, since the Forbidden Door pay-per-view. Nobody knows what's going on with Adam Cole, man. But I'll say this: if he actually does become healthy and he's cleared to wrestle, I am not against seeing Chris Jericho versus Adam Cole for the Ring of Honor World Championship at all. I think it would be absolutely fantastic to see. And to be honest, Ring of Honor's next pay-per-view is coming up, I believe, December 10th or December 12th. I know Jericho is probably most likely going to defend that Ring of Honor World Championship on that pay-per-view. So who knows, who he's going to go up against to defend that belt at Ring of Honor's pay-per-view coming up next month. But all in all, it was a decent match. Saraya versus Britt Baker. This was a match that I think a lot of people had their eyeballs on. This was the first match that, Saraya or Paige, if you will, has stepped in the ring in over 5 years. So obviously this match with Saraya and Britt Baker was under a microscope, considerably a lot for Saraya. I mean, Saraya has been out of the ring for 5 years with a severe injury to her back and to her neck. So a lot of people had a lot of eyeballs on this match. Do I think Britt Baker carried the match? Yes, I do. But you got to give, credit where credit's due. Saraya's been off the scene for 5 years. You're going into the ring with one of the best female wrestlers in the world with Britt Baker. Yeah, and Baker carried her, but they did a fantastic job. Saraya got some good moves in. I think she had her brother that was ringside, or in the crowd, I should say, hyping up Saraya. So it was just a great moment to see her in the ring. The crowd was absolutely loving it. And it's great to see her back, man. I look forward to what's going to happen next with Saraya. Are we going to get a rematch between her and Britt Baker? Are we going to get somebody else to challenge Saraya? Who knows, man? But it's great to see Saraya back in the wrestling capacity, in the ring, wrestling for AEW, man. It's fantastic stuff. Wardlow versus Hobbs versus Samoa Joe. This was that one match that I didn't understand. I didn't understand the outcome of this match at all. In my preview predictions, I had Wardlow getting the win for abundance of reasons, man. Number one, there's no build to this match. For this TNT Championship, there's no build at all. Number one. Number two, Wardlow hasn't really done, anything with this championship, man. I mean, he really hasn't. And to be honest with you, it's a shame because, when Wardlow was having that great storyline with MJF, and it was a great storyline, Wardlow was one of the top draws of, and I'm not saying he's still not, but with that storyline, it really put Wardlow in a top echelon spot in AEW. And after the feud that he had with MJF, I'll never forget it, that his first match after the feud was a match against, JD Drake. And it was like, wow, man, you went from having this guy in a great storyline with MJF to giving him a guy like JD Drake to compete against after this great storyline. And then eventually he got a chance to go up against Scorpio Sky and, dethrone Scorpio Sky for the TNT Championship. And, here we are. But I did not see Wardlow, getting beat in this matchup. I thought obviously Hobbs was going to take the fall for sure, but I didn't see Wardlow losing this championship, and not to Samoa Joe. To me, honestly, Wardlow hasn't really done a damn thing with the TNT Championship. No, and I blame Tony Khan and AEW for that as well. There's no storylines being built. You know, we're talking about the TNT Championship that was once held by, you know, Cody Rhodes, Darby Allin, the late great Brody Lee. That, you know, Brody Lee did a fantastic job putting that TNT Championship on the map. And as of late, man, the TNT Championship means nothing. In my honest opinion, man, it doesn't mean anything. I mean, honestly, what's crazy is that you have the North Atlantic Championship being held by Orange Cassidy. That's being more predominantly shown, it seems like, on Dynamite being defended than the actual TNT Championship, which is crazy. The TNT Championship, when it was first invented for AEW, was almost more predominantly shown than their actual World Championship. You know, now it's like the third belt, the best belt they had there. It's like the third best. You know, Wardlow didn't do anything with that belt. And now we have Samoa Joe, who's now Ring of Honor Television Champion, as well as the AEW TNT Champion. So I don't know how that's going to fit into the fold with Samoa Joe. And again, I'm not really liking this whole Ring of Honor AEW thing. And this can cause a lot of confusion with the fans, in my honest opinion, with Samoa Joe carrying both belts for two different companies. That might cause an issue. Because one belt might be defended and the other one probably will not. And who knows, it could be the TNT Championship that probably won't be defended that much. So it's still yet to be seen. But again, hats off to Samoa Joe for getting the win in that match and becoming the new TNT Champion. Next match, Jeff Jarrett and Jay Lethal teaming up against Darby Allin and Sting. I thought it was a great match. Hopefully it is a one-off for Jeff Jarrett. Look, Jeff Jarrett, he's in great shape. You know, I'm not saying it's not good to have Jeff Jarrett in AEW. But what I'm saying to you is it's not good to have Jeff Jarrett in the ring. Not on the mic, not cutting promos, not in the ring. From what I understand, I know he signed a contract with AEW where he, you know, being on-air talent as well as a lot with backstage. Keep him backstage. And to be honest with you, I know Jeff Jarrett, you know, really relies on the glory days of his dad and Jerry Jarrett. And, you know, when Jerry Jarrett was promoting, you know, Memphis Wrestling. This ain't the 60s, man. This is not Jerry Lawler. This is not, you know, Jackie Fargo. This is not Memphis Wrestling. And both Jackie Fargo and Jerry Lawler are absolute legends. Absolute legends. But Jeff Jarrett has tried to run his own company and it's failed. He tried to run Impact Wrestling. He was the main booker for Impact Wrestling under the Dixie Carter regime. And we all saw how that happened and what happened with Impact Wrestling. Impact Wrestling was trying to be the new late great WCW, go up against Vince McMahon again, head to head, and it failed. Now, credit, is Impact Wrestling still around? Yes. But is it as popular as it once was? Hell no. Absolutely not. There's a lot of people that say a lot of things about Impact Wrestling. Impact Wrestling is awful right now. Atrocious. I'm sorry. It's a product that's just boring. It's like NWA Power. Boring. And one of their top stars wants to leave. Two-time champion, Nick Aldis, wants out. He doesn't want to work with Billy Corgan, doesn't want to work with NWA. It's a stale product. That's what happens. But again, you know, Jeff Jarrett, I mean, yeah, have him backstage, don't have him on air. He doesn't need another match. You know, work backstage, man. If you want to work with talent relations to bring in talent, okay, that's fine. But he doesn't need to be in the ring. But I'm glad that Sting and Darby ended up picking up the victory over Jeff Jarrett and Jay Lethal. The other match that had me confused about this card was Jamie Hayter versus Toni Storm. I feel like Toni Storm got a bad rap with this championship, man. I think the interim championship thing needs to go for AEW. Thunder Rosa has been out for a little while, number one. I believe she was out before not Full Gear, the New Japan AEW crossover show, Forbidden Door. She's been out for a while, and I think the interim title over the women's championship should have been off, and, you know, Toni Storm should have been the actual women's champion. With that being said, I mean, did she have a couple title defenses? Yes. But again, no strong build. And, you know, it was the same thing with Thunder Rosa. Thunder Rosa, there was no storyline, there was no great build with that championship. It just wasn't there. And Toni Storm losing to Jamie Hayter, you know, at Full Gear was like, man, you know, what's next for Toni Storm? I'm not against Jamie Hayter winning the championship. I think Jamie Hayter is ready. I think she's a great talent for AEW. She has a lot of potential and could be a great world champion. But again, Toni Storm really didn't do that much with that championship instead of a couple title defenses, man. I think personally Toni Storm should have held that championship until Thunder Rosa returned and we get Toni Storm versus Thunder Rosa because the story writes itself. Before Thunder Rosa got injured and had to relinquish the championship, Toni Storm and Thunder Rosa were a tag team known as Thunderstorm. The story would have wrote itself. You have two women that are tag teams. One gets injured, one comes back, better than ever. And you have friends turn to foes, and you have Toni Storm versus Thunder Rosa for the AEW Undisputed Women's Championship. It would have wrote itself. Again, not taking anything away from Jamie Hayter. Jamie Hayter is definitely ready to carry that championship. She's done a fantastic job with what she's done inside that squared circle, man. And her aligning herself with Britt Baker has nothing but elevated her career. But here's the biggest question. Now that she won that championship, are we going to see Jamie Hayter versus Britt Baker sometime soon? It could very much happen, man. It's going to be an interesting match if it does happen. So, again, this match did confuse me on why Storm didn't get the win, but I'm not mad that Hayter got the win and became the new AEW Interim Women's Champion. I think she's going to do a great job, and I look forward to what's going to happen next with Jamie Hayter as well as Toni Storm. The Acclaim versus Swerve in Our Glory. It was a good match, man. I mean, this was their third match between the Acclaim and Swerve in Our Glory. I'm not surprised the Acclaim got the victory over Swerve in Our Glory, but what did surprise me a little bit was Keith Lee and Swerve. Keith Lee ended up walking away from Swerve, and I said this in my preview predictions as well. I think it's time for Swerve in Our Glory to kind of do their own thing. Swerve obviously wants to be a heel. I think Keith Lee is going to be a humongous babyface in the company, and I think it's time these guys, go their separate ways, man, and go for a singles run. Swerve can go for the TNT Championship or, the AEW All-Atlantic Championship, and we can have Keith Lee in the world title picture going into 2023, next year for AEW, and that would be absolutely awesome. I think Keith Lee is severely underrated, especially for a guy his size and the stuff that he can do inside that square circle. I mean, hell, man, I've stated it multiple times in the past about Keith Lee from his NXT days. A dream match for me for Keith Lee would be Keith Lee versus Vader or Keith Lee versus Bam Bam Bigelow, because all three of those guys can move like a cruiserweight, and they're both walking around over 350 and can move like a cruiserweight, man. It's absolutely insane. So I definitely look forward to what's going to happen next with the Acclaimed. I think FTR are probably going to be knocking on the door of the Acclaimed to challenge them for the AEW Tag Team Championships. As far as Swerve in Our Glory, man, I think Swerve, like I said, is going to be heel. I think he's going to be going after Billy Gunn here more soon and going after the Acclaim, where I think Keith Lee's going to kind of do his own thing, become a babyface, and maybe go after the World Championship, man, which makes for a fantastic matchup if whoever holds that, AEW World Championship. So hats off to the Acclaim for getting the win in that match and retaining the AEW World Championship. Moving on from that, we go in the main event, man. What Full Gear was all about. Jon Moxley versus MJF. This was a storyline that's been going on for many months. MJF comes back in the casino ladder match with a mask on, with the help of Stokely Hathaway, and grabs the casino ladder match chip and decides to cash in at Full Gear to go up against Jon Moxley for the AEW World Championship. And that's exactly what MJF did. He ended up picking up the victory over Jon Moxley with the help of Sir William Regal. MJF becomes the new AEW World Champion. In my preview predictions, I picked MJF to win. I think it's time for there to be a change in AEW, a paradigm shift, if you will. And I think they need to hit the reset button, man. I think everything that happened with the Elite and CM Punk, and now the Elite are back. It looks like the House of Black are on their way back as well, with Malachi Black and Buddy Matthews and Brody King, as well as Julia Hart. So it looks like they're on their way back as well. It looks like all the cards are back on the table again for AEW going into 2023, except for the likes of Chris Statlander and Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly, who are still on the shelf, as well as Thunder Rosa. Their future is still yet to be determined on whether they're coming back from injury or not, but I'm hoping they all come back healthy and, they're ready to go, because, man, I think 2023 is going to be a big, big year for AEW, and I think they need to. And that's why I think MJF walked out of Full Gear as the new world champion, because I think AEW, after all this stuff that's been going on, like I said, with the Elite and CM Punk and some backstage stuff between Guevara and Eddie Kingston and Guevara and Andrade, and some people still not happy with being in the company, like Andrade, I think 2023 should be a reset for AEW. Now, there's still people that want to leave, and there's still people, there on the roster not being utilized. Number one, Andrade. Andrade's not being utilized, and, he desperately wants out of AEW to go to WWE. Okay, see you later. I stated this in the past, man. Andrade's a great talent. But if you don't want to be there, go. Really, go. Because all it's going to do is just cause issues backstage in the locker room. that AEW just does not need right now. So just go, honestly, and then you have, like I said, the CM Punk and Elite issue. CM Punk might not be coming back in the doors of AEW. And honestly, I think the fans are okay with it, considering how they reacted with the Elite showing up at Full Gear. I think they were okay with it. And I think it looks like, a lot of signs are leaning towards CM Punk kind of going his own way. He's asked for a buyout with his contract. He made his first public appearance for a company called CFFC, which is Chicago Fighting Championships or something, some kind of MMA promotion in Chicago. We'll see. That was the first, appearance that CM Punk made since the All Out Media Scrum, was that MMA promotion in Chicago that he was doing commentary for. And then we had the Elite that are back in the ring going up against Death Triangle for the Trios Championship. So that whole CM Punk issue, we're going to see what happens with that, probably next May, to be honest with you, when CM Punk is, back being healthy again. Who knows? He might come back. Who knows? But like I said, man, this was a hard reset for AEW. I think Full Gear as a whole was one of their best shows they had all year. As a whole, I think it was a great show, a lot of great moments, and a lot of crazy stuff that happened with the championships being changed with the women's championship as well as the world championship. And this is MJF's time, man. I think MJF deserves it. I think he's going to shake things up for AEW. He's going to keep a lot of fans, including Tony Khan, on his toes, and this is exactly what the fans want, man. There's fans out here that want AEW to survive, including myself. And a guy like MJF, the way that he is on the microphone, how he is as a person, being spontaneous and just going off the rails on the microphone or cutting a hell of a promo. That's what AEW needs. That's what AEW needs. And I think MJF is going to give everybody what they want with him being world champion going into AEW, with AEW going into 2023. So definitely look forward to what's going to happen next with MJF as well as Jon Moxley. But like I said, this was definitely something that AEW needed to do for a hard reset going into 2023. So, but this is my review of AEW's Full Gear. I hope you guys are out there staying safe. Be careful, and remember, stay classic. Peace.